Good evening and welcome to the January 20th, 2026 regularly scheduled City Council meeting for City of Nacogdoches. Blaine, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Lord, thank you for bringing us together one more time. We're here to do nothing but run your city's government. Lord, we wish that no man should wish evil for evil, but that we should do good toward each other. Lord, we're here that every citizen in the city of Nacogdoches and the surrounding area be awarded and rewarded the things that we have in council that we come up with that we're going to be able to make decisions on. Lord, let our decisions be those that are thought through and worked through and have everyone in mind. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you will, stand for the pledges, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, next item is open forum. We have one request to speak. Mr. Santiago.
Good evening. I have some handouts if that's okay for me to
Sure.
pass out to you guys. Here you go.
It's just one page,
Yeah, just one page.
front and back.
There's a few extra copies in there.
This is non-agenda items. Are y'all on the agenda actually though?
This is just public forum.
Public forum.
Okay.
It's regarding one of the items in the agenda.
It's related to the public hearing item, right?
Correct, yeah.
You really need to provide this during the public hearing portion.
Okay,
Yeah. This is related to the ESSI.
yeah. I can speak afterwards if that's okay.
Sure, I mean, it's a public hearing, so you have the opportunity to come speak.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Let's just hold.
Yeah, you can just hold on to those.
You can review it now.
Yeah. We'll be back then. Thank you, guys.
So you don't want open forum? You're going to be a
We'll
public
speak.
hearing?
We'll speak then, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, here you go. Okay, next item, items to be removed from the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now to the regular agenda. Item 6A, consider approval of an ordinance of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, amending Chapter 118 zoning, Article 1 in general, Section 118-1 definitions, Article 3 district regulations, Section 118-272 land use schedule, and Article 4 supplementary district regulations, adding Section 118-327 energy storage systems, industrial ESS-I of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, providing a severability clause, providing a continuation clause, and providing a repeal clause, and providing an effective date. Mike New, Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. Tonight's public hearing item is an ordinance amendment for our Chapter 118, our zoning ordinance, adding a land use category that has not been previously defined or included within our current edition of the zoning ordinance. Now, we've made many, I would consider minor, some potentially major changes over the last year to our zoning ordinance. We've utilized feedback from our zoning ordinance subcommittee, this one which has feedback and discussions included. I'll cover some of those things, and we presented this item at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on January 12th. So let me start on this by kind of describing the overarching theme related to your consideration of tonight's item. The whole state has seen an increase in energy supply over the last year, many of that from these alternative energy, renewable energy type sources. And I've provided some specific data points, 12 gigawatts being deployed across our energy grid, our electric grid to date. Many of those coming from those renewables that I mentioned. There's rapid grid scale deployment of energy storage systems to go along with that to provide that storage basis in order for those alternative energy sources to actually supplement the grid, to facilitate pushing that energy when it's needed at certain times to the state's energy grid. What does that mean for us? Like any other city that could be impacted by this type of land use, we're evaluating whether or not it fits within our land use categories, our zoning, what the permit implications might be, what the surrounding development implications might be, and how we as a city or city of Nacogdoches, how we want to prioritize that within our land use plan. The unique safety profile of BESS, in particular, battery energy storage systems. We've had some discussions with our zoning ordinance subcommittee about some of the potential hazards associated with those, thermal runaway, toxic emissions, those sorts of things. If something were to happen to a particular system that's in place, what does that do for the surrounding area, and does it create some uncertainty? It certainly does. Do we want to treat this as a unique case in terms of land use? Something that wasn't included within the agenda, I added this because I thought it would be good to include a visual of what these battery systems in particular, it's one example, would look like. These are larger scale, but two that have been promoted just in the past year or two in other areas of Texas, further west. It gives you a sense of what these larger, particularly BESS systems would look like, and I'll cover what that means in just a minute. So why is this a consideration for us? We've had inquiries over the last year or two in our surrounding area and for inquiries within our city limits about potential opportunities for battery energy storage systems, utility scale, providing support for potentially larger scale solar farm developments. One of the developers was quoted, I think, in our Daily Sentinel about needing up to 3,000 acres to support a solar farm, but a battery storage system potentially in support and supplementing that on the grid would require much less space. So battery energy storage system is one type, thermal energy storage is another type. There may be others. One of the things we wanted to do in presenting this to the council for consideration was not solely look through blinders at just battery energy storage, although that's the term of the day and certainly something many cities are looking at now. Can that be universally applied if it all serves the same purpose? If it's meant to supplement the energy grid, can we apply a term that we can sort of stand behind and find meaning for that can simply be applied? If there's other development inquiries or opportunities that present themselves, we have a land use category to accommodate that. The comparison, specifically to my example about solar farm versus battery storage, solar farms need a lot of acreage. Battery storage systems in particular to support those solar farms need a much smaller land area. So where solar farms may not be compatible within our city limits because we don't have a large number, 3,000 acres, we might come close, but we don't have a large area like that within our city limits to really have to negotiate that in terms of specific industrial development. Battery energy storage, much smaller footprint. And because it's connecting to the grid, it could be connected in a way that still falls within our city limits where the larger components fall outside of our city limits. What are some other considerations? It may have been practice in the past to say, well, if it's not defined in our land use, if it's not defined in our zoning ordinance specifically, then it's generally not permitted. Courts do not support that approach today, and they've not really held that to be a valid claim to make to interested applicants. It is why currently when our city planner and our development office and our engineers, we look at a particular requested land use. If we don't have a very specific, clear definition and land use category to push that into, we identify some that fall very close to that and some that really would fit in a larger category. and we utilize that in our consideration, in our proposals to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council. There's really not a lot of gray in it. When there is, we do bring amendments to the council, and I'll give you an example of the tattoo parlor and beauty parlor definitions you've seen in the last, I think, 3 or 4 months ago, 5 months ago. We were sort of sliding that into a tattoo salon or tattoo parlor category when it really should have been in something different. We cleared that up with some alternative definitions that are really applied at the state level for licensing purposes. Similar to this, this is a unique land use that we can't really slide into our utilities major category where it's permitted across the board because it's got some unique profile to it. So the need for ESSI, these implications, and some of the defined land use that we're applying here for your consideration, there's just some profiles that we think require not only industrial land use categorization, but specific use permitting in particular. So what does the comp plan say? For utility scale type of uses, as this is being presented, I highlighted in red on some of these bullet points. Some of the points we thought may apply to this specific case. Neighboring land uses should not detract from the enjoyment or value of properties. If you have what we consider industrial use here, placing that just anywhere, permitting this just anywhere does take away from potentially those neighboring land uses and what those expectations are of those property owners. Other negative land use impacts, noise, odor, pollution, excessive light, traffic, there's others. Those really need to be considered and minimized. And we mentioned and can speak more if council has questions about some of the potential hazards. We do have representatives of our fire department here to speak to that. We also have a representative from Encore if there's questions about how this fits in with the electric grid or the industry in general. For industrial development, which is what staff is proposing to establish here, they have to be targeted in select development areas, and certainly heavy industrial and light industrial are areas we've identified not only in our zoning map today, but in our future land use map, and I'll show those in a minute. They need to have good access to primary streets, major highways. Typically, everyone would want that for a commercial or industrial use. Separated from others by buffers, and setbacks can certainly accomplish that. Identifying categories that will require other buffering zoning districts to establish compatibility with the comprehensive plan. That's one where we can address through the current definition. And then not directly adjacent to residential areas if we're applying an industrial use here. What does our future land use plan say? So just showing a visual of our current plan. Again, this is a plan that was adopted in 2003. We are working, as we've told council, and kind of back that up by applying for state funding to make serious updates and analysis to our future land use plan. But this is what we have today. Larger scale manufacturing and distribution activities can be accompanied by with outdoor activity areas and storage. That all fits really within the model of what particularly battery energy storage, but maybe some of these other energy storage systems, they fit within this category primarily. Again, just reiterating what these other categories are, so you can see where our purple or industrial, heavy industrial, light industrial, what are they surrounded by? Many of them are surrounded by rural, but also single-family residential. Just by way of the history of the community and when we've established our zoning ordinance and how we've applied those over time. Many of these are generational. Many of these have non-conforming developments within those zoning districts. So many of them haven't developed over time, and when they have, we've required zone changes to accomplish that. What does our zoning ordinance subcommittee say? We, as a staff, have presented different versions of ESS regulations and shown examples from other cities. I've got some in this presentation as well. For meetings in May, August, and October of 2025, where we've kind of refined and talked about what some of the concerns would be from the Planning and Zoning Commission perspective, from Zoning Board of Adjustment perspective, and of course from our council member representatives, Williams and Wall. We did have our fire department come in and talk about what makes the particular energy storage uses like BESS, for example, unique, and why that might necessitate specific use permitting in this case. So the subcommittee's heard from them on that, and they've also requested. In particular, one request that came out that I think we've paid close attention to is how do we separate energy storage on a residential scale, meaning your EV chargers, your rooftop residential solar panels, how do we separate that from industrial scale? Well, one, we wanted to be clear about the definition. We're applying energy storage system industrial, but we're also placing a capacity on that, 1 megawatt hour capacity, to distinguish what would normally be residential or single use or within footprint use energy storage versus purposeful utility scale energy grid supportive uses.
Quick question, Mike, since I
Yes.
don't even believe in watches that have batteries. Now, with industrial uses, and Blaine's used to this, with heavy industrial uses down in the petrochem complexes, they have their own fire support. Is this so new that that hasn't even come into play? Meaning, they have it because you shouldn't put your municipal, now sometimes they have to respond as well, they'll work in concert, but typically they have their own fire support for those facilities on site. I'd let Blaine kind of speak to that presence because, and their other staff. Now, I realize these are probably not staffed, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't have its own fire suppression systems, especially given how wooded we are and all the above. I mean, this may get into, no one wants to deal with a burning Tesla. No offense to those of us that have Teslas, but I don't think even most fire departments want to deal with a Tesla.
That's good. And I'll address,
And sorry, this is from an F-150 guy.
yeah, and I'll address a couple of those components. But I'll keep going. I want to present all this, let the public hearing open for comments, and then I can address any questions. What do other cities say? Now, particularly to address something like battery energy storage, some cities address that very specifically. Again, our attempt is within that to address something like battery energy storage, which is what we're seeing today, but applying a definition that can be applied for the same reasons to any industry level energy storage. So Baytown utilizes specific use with specific definitions, screening, notice requirements, and decommissioning requirements. They don't apply industrial zoning restrictions. Bryan does apply industrial zoning restriction and supplementary regulations similar to specific use permitting. League City provides a specific definition for BESS in particular, with other separation, buffering, and safety requirements similar to what we're proposing with specific use. And then Texas City also provides a definition, district classification. They have a whole chapter dedicated within their ordinance to this particular land use of battery energy storage.
And one thing I'd add to what Mike said, two of those, Baytown and Texas City, are heavily industrialized. I mean heavily.
So what does the industry say? We did, and I'm not sure if the person that's here that may be providing comment is a representative of this group, but I did want to share with the council, as I did with the Planning and Zoning Commission, ESA Solar was one of several entities communicating with property owners in our area and have inquired about what currently exists in terms of zoning regulation with BESS facilities. They've purported to state that they are seeking a BESS with 10 megawatt capacity for a duration of 1 to 2 hours that gets into megawatt per hour capacity, and would prefer specific use, but in any zoning district. Again, presenting what they've shared, and then they're certainly welcome to provide comments if they're here, and supportive of supplemental regulations involving the many things that we've discussed. I'll continue because there's other components to some of what we're proposing. It's because of other things that have come about. So our definition, energy storage, we're pulling 99% of this from the National Fire Code. We've recently, as council's aware, and this last summer, we've updated our building of fire codes to the most current editions we can, 2024 and I think 2023 energy code. Those codes do have definitions for some of the residential scale and even some of the larger grid scale energy storage systems. So much of this pulls from them. What we've included here as a way to distinguish from residential and industrial is the capacity rating, the 1 megawatt hour. So we're trying to be consistent with the codes that we're already would be requiring development to follow in terms of what we provide and how we evaluate and inspect some of these larger developments if and when they come in. We're trying to distinguish between large and small scale, but we're also applying ESS generally, not just for battery energy storage specifically. We haven't seen as much requests or inquiries outside of battery energy storage, but we don't want to be too restrictive. Land use recommendation here, we've provided because it does fall into the category of what we consider heavy industrial. We're providing this I2 land use recommendation with specific use permit. The starred asterisk that you would see within our land use schedule simply denotes that any potential applicant would need to refer to our supplementary guidelines for more information. And what do those guidelines include? Section 327, there's a new section that would be applied called Energy Storage System Industrial. There'd be a minimum area lot size of 1 acre, setbacks a minimum of 50 feet. Again, we wanted to be clear about saying that those are minimums, that if a specific use under consideration by the council, if a particular area dictated that a larger setback or a larger area of lot size might be needed in order to accommodate a particular area based on surrounding uses and the council's direction, that could be done. These are simply minimums. Perimeter fencing, landscaping and screening, separation, all to sort of buffer those hazardous elements that could be associated with this particular use. And then a decommissioning plan. The procedure would be in accordance with state law. House Bill 3809 was passed during this recent legislative session, acquiring a number of items for this particular use, energy storage system uses, to have a lot of planning elements, some even financial, that they have to provide and reporting to the state that they're meeting certain obligations. We would want to mirror that and confirm that that decommissioning plan has and been justly presented to the state as well. Again, we're not necessarily trying to do anything that would conflict with the state. We want to be in complement to what the state is doing and do what's within our authority at the local level and with what matches our own planning efforts and land use desires. And that is all I have, and I'd be happy to answer questions after the public hearing.
This is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody here to speak? Okay. Come on up. Yeah. Brandy, yeah.
Hi, Brandy Cartwright, 2806 North Pecan Street. I'm excited to see this on the agenda. I think alternative energy is really important, but it's also really important to zone for it. I just have two questions. One is, are we coordinating our zoning and zoning definitions with the county so that we have a comprehensive picture of what is allowed? Because, I mean, you can't put a 3,000 acre solar farm in the city limits, but that means that we're going to have farms outside the city limits and possible storage stuff inside, and lots of different coordination is going to have to happen as the city grows in the future. So I was curious about that. And the other thing, he mentioned that personal, like residential things were being considered for like cars and things like that. But I was curious if that also included like solar cells that you put on your roof or systems that are for a single residence, because I don't know the terminology, so I wasn't sure exactly what he was saying.
Mike, you want to answer that? Pardon me?
One
Okay,
megawatt.
all right, okay.
I'm making notes.
Okay, all right. Okay, anybody else?
Guess it's my turn now. There we go.
We got your hand out.
Yes, sir. Name is Jonathan Santiago. My colleague Ernest. We are with ESA Solar, as Mike mentioned earlier. We're here to talk about property on 1902 Douglas Road, formerly known as Gottel Ministries. So we are looking to possibly site a 10 megawatt battery energy storage system, like Mike mentioned. And we just wanted to talk a little bit about the current draft code. that classifies best over 1 MWh as industrial use, ESSI, allowed, as we just heard, in only I2 heavy industrial. So in that sheet that I shared you guys on the first page, you can see that we want to propose an alternative, ESSC, for commercial energy storage system. Because even though utility lines and transmission are permitted in all districts, and so are utility facilities as well, we feel like battery energy storage system is at this size is small enough where it would go in conjunction with the substation. As you see here, it would also be sited within a 1/4 mile radius as well. And we also have this map here that kind of highlights the areas that are heavy industrial in purple, and then in purple, and then yellow is all the residential. As you see, there's a lot of residential zoning here in the city, and in the red circles here, these are the substations that are within the city, and the outline is a 1/4 mile radius. So as you see, there are pretty much no industrial areas, light industrial or heavy industrial, within a 1/4 mile radius of the substation. So that is why we propose that it would be adding another section of ESSC. And to add as well, we definitely agree ESSI should be relegated to the I2 district with strict safety requirements. But we just want to carve out a space for us for ESSC for batteries between 1 MW to 10 megawatts. So capped out at 10. So you wouldn't have big systems, big utility scale systems, 50 or 150, that take up a lot more acreage. And what Mike said as well is correct, that this project would be around 1 acre, 2 acres max if you include fencing, perimeter, any buffering, road to get to the property as well. But yeah, so keeping up all the same strict safety standards as the ESSI, but allowing ESSC within 1/4 miles of a substation with a specific use permit. So it would only be specific use ESSC within a 1/4 mile. So it wouldn't be anywhere in the city as well. So you're literally restricted to just 5 areas within the city for this as well. Any questions so far with what I said?
So the C is up to 10 megawatts, is it?
Up to 10 megawatts, yes, sir.
Who do you work for?
ESA Solar. We are a solar development company based out of Orlando, Florida.
Only?
Oh, well, we work nationwide, but our headquarters are in Orlando.
Not worldwide.
Oh, no, not worldwide. No, it's sorry, U.S. only.
Are these built on site, or are they sort of prefab and you bring them in?
So the batteries are it's like a shipping container. So that's brought in and trucked in, and then we either have 2 options. We either put concrete slabs down and just put all the batteries on a slab, or we have piles where they're just driven in each one and secured that way. And then the connection would be made through the right-of-way, the existing right-of-way for the utility, straight to the substation.
And are there air handlers on these buildings? Because I know that some of the complaints, I say, well, they build a 6-foot fence, but it's the noise on top of that
Yeah.
that seems to drive the neighborhood crazy.
I gotcha. That's a good question. So with these systems, a good thing is every year the technology keeps improving, and that's one of the things that keeps improving with these systems. So right now, studies show that these batteries can go are lower than 45 to 50 to 45 decibels of noise. So it's the same as you're driving by a substation. You just hear a quick hum, and then it's gone. So that's pretty much how the batteries would sound, especially the smaller scale as well. A bigger industrial scale, yes, definitely you'll hear some more noise there with the inverters and all the fans, a lot of more batteries. But with these, a 10 megawatt, you'd see 4 or 5 batteries, and it's small, 1 acre area. So the noise with that would be very minimal as well.
The police department just did a decibel sound test here.
Okay.
And there was no discernible difference except for the person's irritation. I mean, they could sit and hold it against a frat party and it would still pass the smell test or the sound test.
Gotcha.
But for the person living next door, it was driving them a little bit crazy, that constant hum. Is that something that we're going to deal with?
So that's something that we can work on as well with adding buffering, additional buffering, adding more trees or specific type of fencing as well that can help with that. So that's things that we're willing to work with the Planning and Zoning Commission to adhere to. You know,
Is that in the ordinance?
Say that again?
Is that working with, and the things they're talking about, is that written in the ordinance, or is it just something we're contemplating?
It depends. So there are screening requirements when there is commercial buffering residential districts. There may be requirements for landscaping if it is along one of our overlay district corridors. So it depends on the location, what our requirements might be. It's not necessarily universal, but those specific requirements about screening and landscaping particular to a site, depending on where it is, would fit within the type of discretion we would evaluate with specific use permits. So that's typical. And historically, just in the time that I've been here, we've utilized specific use permits for, say, bar and restaurant type uses that go into late hours of the night, where we, through the specific use permit, we assign hours of operation based on the property owner's wishes and what the council deems appropriate for that area. So this would kind of fall into that category if we did that.
Okay, thanks. Do you guys mind me asking more questions, or are you
Go
good
right
with
ahead.
it? Okay,
Can I add something to the noise point?
yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for your time on this. My name's Ernest. I work with Jonathan at ESA. I wanted for the record to state Mr. Martin of Godtel, his cooperation on this project, his involvement as a member of the community, I think is something that we don't see a lot with our landowners, and it's something that we think is very important to have a human story, a human face to these projects. And he was actually able to walk us around the property today, around the site. There's a lot of heavy vegetation, specifically on the eastern side of the property, which is where there's going to be the most distance between the site and the property line. Very, very heavy vegetation, shrubs, trees. And once you get to the actual property line where you start the residential area, there's several properties with what looks like some dog breeding going on with a lot of barking. And I foresee that being more noise than the battery site, especially given the distance. You're shaking your head no.
He's looking at me, probably.
I know where you are.
Oh, you know that house. Yeah,
Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
house, I know that area.
yeah. They look like nice folks, but the volume of the dogs, I think, would be more substantial. I mean, obviously, we'd have to measure it, but
Not
just,
not to be personal, but the complex over there, right around from your area of Godtel, is a complex of housing areas across the street, right?
right.
Okay. With that being taken into consideration, when everything's going well, nobody has a problem. But once the problem occurs, and what I mean by that, your fire department, if we do have to deal with something of that nature, who handles that? Where do you get off, and where do you come in with us?
What specifically do you mean?
If we have issues with you, once you set up everything,
With the operational site?
operational site,
Oh.
all the buffers and
You
everything,
can go.
Noise-wise, you mean?
yes.
Okay. Well, by that point, we would have an approved permit and approval with the state as well, because it wouldn't be just with the city. And once you start building a building, it's already gone. So once the system is operational, the permit was approved by that point.
So you're asking us to not adopt the ordinance that is proposed, or to amend it to include another category, am I? understanding your
Correct, yeah. So
proposal?
we are open to both options. We are open to having more discussions with the planning commission to further develop an ordinance and amendment that you guys are comfortable with and the city is comfortable with, of course. But yeah, we mainly just want to be heard out and answer any questions that the planning commission or you guys may have regarding safety or how these batteries work. That way, everybody's fully educated on how these systems fully work. Because we see nationwide more and more townships and cities adopting ordinances where they don't really understand the full concept of how batteries work. And we've seen some cities not have the correct, let's say, decommissioning plans and things like that. And then in the end of the project, they're just stuck with the project there. And it's not running, it's not benefiting the city. So that's why we want to collaborate to make sure we don't just want to benefit ourselves.
Or they're adopting ordinances because of actually how they do work.
Yeah.
That goes both ways.
Yeah.
So is it appropriate now to ask Mr. New his opinion of why we should stay with the original? I would love to hear his opinion on this.
Can I ask that we,
Close the public hearing first?
yeah, if there's any more comments, that those be presented and then we close
It's
the public
fine.
hearing.
I don't have any other questions, but I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So this is really instructive to see the area you're proposing.
Yeah.
Is, aside from the boxed in green portion, is that a satellite photo?
That's a 3D rendering that our team put together based off a satellite photo. Yes.
Okay. I was just making sure that I understood which direction you were talking about the heavy vegetation being, because it looks like there's not a whole lot toward that residential area.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. That's one of the things that we'd be willing to work on and have as part of a, let's say, permit approval to add more vegetation or more buffering in that area.
Okay, 'cause am I right that that's east?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I took some photos on my phone. If anyone's curious of what it looks like when we were out there today, I can show you. Obviously, it's only, from the viewpoint of a person. It's not an aerial. But something that we like to do with the permission of the landowner is to take some drone footage of the site so you can get a more accurate viewpoint from, 50, 70 feet and not just the ground view. So that's something that we can do at a later time next month or the month after that and show that to you guys.
Okay, so are you buying the whole property of Godtail,
We are not buying anything.
or you're leasing?
Yes, our model is to be able to provide our landowners with some income for their land.
Okay.
Let me ask one other question. What are the dangers and what are the possible dangers with larger battery storage systems?
Well, there's a few things that can happen. Well, there's scenarios that anything can happen when it comes to batteries. The good thing is that there's a lot of new safety features that are built into the batteries, and there's a lot of new safety standards that not for the city we have to follow, but statewide code that we have to follow.
So what are the dangers, not the safety protocols?
Well, like any other battery, the battery could malfunction and stop working, and yeah,
Fire.
Could catch fire?
it could, yes.
And the larger the systems, probably the higher the risk? Is that correct?
You could say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would our firemen be endangered by having to work on putting these type fires out?
Well, it depends. The system, the manufacturer would provide specific training and manuals to the local fire department for them to follow, and what steps to follow, and reach out specific contacts to reach out to, in order to manage that. If it were to come to that catastrophe, there's steps for the department to follow.
But the city then would have to take over. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go right ahead. But with that being said, then that means that there's gonna have to be some different equipment bought for our fire department to cover that, right?
And those are things that can be written as well for permits.
Yeah, I think maybe the fire department like to speak to this, but I think they said if they had to put out a fire at a battery storage system, all the equipment that they wore would have to be replaced. It's a one-time use kind of thing. Is that correct? Does anybody want to talk to that?
We have to close the public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Our city manager had a question.
The only other question is in terms of country of origin of the hardware and the equipment.
It just depends. At the moment, we like to use Tesla that are mainly made here in America. As you know, with the incentives, not incentives, sorry, with the tariffs and all that. Yeah, not incentives, the opposite of incentives. With all the tariffs and all that, we are definitely looking to use more American-made products. That's to say, not 100% guarantee that that's going to be the case, depending, because the project would take a few years to get approvals from the local utility and all that. So it's not like construction would be start tomorrow. There's a whole other process that we have to go through. So our goal usually is to use.
So you don't want to go to China?
So
Get your stuff, huh?
after the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, companies like ours are required to source a certain minimum of all of our materials in the United States. So by law, we have to use American. Just real quick on the fire question, because of all these fires that we've seen in battery systems, the vast majority of this technology that's being deployed now is having all of these issues in mind. And the way they're designing this is when there's a failure in the cell, it doesn't spread to the other cells, and there's a contingency for that failure to be contained. And these systems can even have built-in extinguishers, suppression systems, so that when there is that failure, it's only in that piece and doesn't spread to the entire system.
What's Godtel's liability on this?
I don't think that there is much at all. Do you know
Since we would be technically in charge of that piece of the land, they're not owning the equipment or anything like that, so they're not liable for any of that.
But if it burned to the ground, and they burn for a long time, right? When they burn, is that true?
Usually
would that ruin the land? Would it be polluted forever, a long time?
And that's
Or
where we
miniature
would
Chernobyl?
have to see. There's not a lot of case studies to support that land has been polluted for many years. So
How many years is it polluted for? Have they had any case studies?
th-
5 years, 10 years?
that's what there's old battery fires in some factories in California that happened a few years ago that they're currently under study to see how those have affected the land around the area. But then again, that's older battery technology that was used. That is not the same. Those are systems that were installed in 2015, 2016. So technology has changed substantially since then. And even the way the batteries are made as well.
Okay, any other questions?
With public hearing still open, Mayor.
Yeah,
And
I'm
we need
fixing
to
to
see if anybody else
Yeah,
wants to address this.
anybody else from the audience?
Thank you.
Want to say anything? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Martin Baker with Godtel Ministries. Our address is 1902 Douglas Road. The property that ESA is talking about is our property. And all of our mission is on one side of the right-of-way, and the place where they're going to be putting this battery storage thing is on the other side of the right-of-way. And it is separated by a number of trees, quite a bit of vegetation on our side, as well as on the side towards the road over on Ritchie Street. The closest residential to where they're going to be wanting to build is actually over towards, I think it's Looneyville Road. There's a few houses over there on one of the side roads, and then a few houses right along Looneyville. But we've been working with this ESA for some months now, working out the details on the lease and the proposal that they had. And some of the questions that y'all had about safety and stuff are some of the same things that we had. Safety and impact. How's it going to make us feel? Is there going to be any tremendous danger that we're going to be facing since it's going to be right on our property? And so we've been assured from the studies that we've done, you know, the information that we've received and the things that we've learned from them and from other resources, that this is going to have minimum impact, and there's minimum danger involved with these systems. And so we've been here for 50 years, and we don't want to do anything to endanger the community whatsoever. And so we've been satisfied with the answers that we've got and the information that we've received from them and from other sources. So if that helps you anyway, we've looked into it as best we could. And I know y'all are going to do due diligence too. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the audience? If not, I'll close the public hearing and invite Mr. New back up to answer some of these questions.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'll address ones I've got notes on, and then Councilmember Bellinger, I may ask you to repeat your question. Coordination with Nacogdoches County. The city has unique authority in land use regulation, zoning ordinances that the county does not have, so we would not be sort of walking in tandem with this. We are aware of things happening in the county, and I know Rick's spoken with some folks, and for us to understand what those impacts within our ETJ and the county area might be, but we have that unique authority in land use regulations. It's not necessarily something we would go hand in hand with zoning ordinance, because the county doesn't provide for that. Only our municipality does. But we are aware of what's happening, and we're communicating with those officials as best we can.
The only thing I'd add is it would be nice if we could have some assurance that any of the communication devices or inverters are confirmed through either Department of Energy, Department of State, to not be originating from our international, let's say, peers or challengers. Okay, so I'm just going to say that doesn't fit a normal zoning discussion, but I think if anything does or can't be certified, I would try to bracket it as a no.
And I may get to something a little more specific, catching up on that item right there. Residential energy storage was another question. In our distinction, what we're trying to do is not overly restrict or segregate a single-family homeowner from putting solar panels on the roof. The energy capacity that would serve that particular home or piece of property would be on a much, much lower scale. And I'm saying that in terms of kilowatts, not megawatts. So that wouldn't come close to approaching the threshold that we're applying here for this particular land use category. EV chargers kind of fall into that. And our fire codes, our updated fire codes and building codes, those all account for this type of residential level, I'll use that again, residential level, smaller scale energy storage, something that's meant to serve a single parcel or a single property as alternative energy or energy backup. There is integration with the energy grid in the system, but it doesn't serve the same purpose. What we're trying to do is apply a definition that serves a land use whose purpose is to support the energy grid, to support utility scale energy backup or energy alternative in those energy failure events that have happened a few times over the last few years at the state level in all areas of our community and others. I do want to reiterate that there's been some specific examples with a piece of property, the Godtail community, that have been presented. Now, there's been no application filed. In this discussion about amending the ordinance, there are certain preferences, obviously, that have been shared in the comments, but we're trying to look at all the potential impacts of usage and apply very broad standards, but with specific purpose for defining this land use category. We're not confining it to one particular item that's presented. We don't have an application before you. If council were to pass this amendment as presented, if the property owners at Godtail and the company who's wishing to lease on their property wishes to continue to pursue this, they have a path to pursue it. That would be seeking a zoning district change. That would be seeking specific use permitting capability. Those would be actions that would again come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and Council specifically. So if this were passed, there is a path for those property owners to seek what they're desiring and they're presenting to you. If this doesn't pass, we fall potentially into a gray area where we really need to define or provide a category for some of the uses that are presented. That's part of the reason we're bringing the timing of this now, and we're we're sort of working in communication with the folks that have expressed interest because we need to define this for ourselves. And does that address your question?
I think it does, but
Okay.
let me ask another specific question. I'm trying to understand the request that they have put before us. Have they been requesting to amend this ordinance to include another category?
I'm trying to
or-
encapsulate
Yeah.
in general terms, and certainly they can clarify, but one of the restrictive elements in their perspective that they presented is that the heavy
size.
industrial district does limit their ability to potentially seek development under the current zoning districts citywide, ones that already exist.
Right.
They would have to go through a zoning change if this industrial 2 category were applied with this definition.
Okay.
They'd have to go through the zone change process. If it were applied to all districts, they would still have to go through a process similar to the zone change, but they would only be seeking specific use permitting.
That makes sense, makes good sense to
And
me.
compatibility with the comp plan is another element that has to be addressed. So
Right.
if the zone change were request, council would be evaluating whether or not it's compatible with our current comprehensive
It's a
plan.
two-step.
Okay, Mike, so all we're doing tonight is considering approval of the ordinance.
This is approval of the ordinance. This would apply a land use definition and a category for this particular use.
Are you satisfied with this as it's written?
I am, and
Okay.
when Planning and Zoning Commission, I'll mention they really focus on some of the environmental hazards, potential environmental hazards, and known environmental hazards that our fire department can speak more to if you have questions. We feel like that the state is working to continually address those. They've got a requirement at the state level. This was passed in just this summer's legislation, effective in September. Requirement for a decommissioning plan, assuming that a particular use, once it's in a city, is abandoned. And now you've left a big mess that has to be strategically mitigated because of some of the hazards involved. The state has required a plan for that, and any company that puts together or proposes a development has to go through a state process. There are not specific state processes to address any potential, and again, there's other research, and until these things are developed and are applied around the state, we're kind of not fully aware what that might be. I think our pursuit would be to make sure we're following and communicating with our state counterparts. If there are environmental issues, TCQ would address those. If there's other licensing issues, the Department of Licensing and Regulation may be stepping in to address those. There may be more things happening at the state level because there is a state interest in this. So we feel like at the local level, we're providing a place for energy storage systems within our community under these certain categories. And then we're trying to mimic or at least complement what state regulation is currently. And as it evolves, we'll continue to evaluate this and make sure that it's complementary.
So I have one other little question. How would we apply, I guess, under the specific use permit, what our city manager was discussing about the origin of inverters on other equipment and the dangers? I guess that's not by ordinance, I guess it's by application?
I would
or-
assume that it'd be part of the SUP process.
Okay, that makes sense.
Benefit of the SUP is, additional conditions
Yes.
can be addressed.
He's kind of
It's-
looking a little,
And I know y'all thinking this is outside the box, but
No.
the concern, and the feds have flagged some of them, and they've got concerns with different technologies. It's not just, it's
Right,
solar, it's wind, it's heavy cranes and ports. There have been, I'm not saying at all anybody in this room, but there has been across the country, unidentified communications devices or functions
Embedded.
particularly within the inverters.
Yeah.
So the main worry would be, and I'll just say it because we're on film, is if we were going to a hot war over Taiwan, would you have some of your utilities turned off? Y'all probably saw the Verizon and AT&T things that came very close to some other things occurring internationally in time in the last week. And I think the main worry is and if you can also look at the map. So you take a state like Virginia, which has a lot of sensitive facilities. They have believe the number one location in terms of battery plants and various battery plants, storage. I think California's second, but Texas is pacing to outpace everyone else. And the main concern is, okay, once you have that on the grid, you're attached to it, you're kind of living off of it, and then if, God forbid, an adversary decided to push a button because it might make it uncomfortable to, say, pursue assisting an ally on the other side of the world.
So I appreciate that very much, and I also appreciate you learning more as you go off to all these conferences to learn about our safety. But so is later on you'll address how to make that part of the decision-making process? Does it become a category in the SUP, or how, that's my question.
I think the specific use permit process would give the city the ability to evaluate very specific things. We've tried to address some of what we believe are the anticipated or even the expected nuisances from this type of development through what we've expressed, that 1 through 6 under supplemental regulations. Setbacks, screening, decommissioning plan, that checks a lot of boxes from some of the concerns that have been expressed by both council and Planning and Zoning Commission. Are we in a position to specifically address unknown, maybe perceived other environmental hazards, maybe not, or through some type of building material requirement or restriction, address maybe what Rick is referring to as far as source materials and where they come from. We do follow federal regulation when we seek federal funding. It's called, the short term of it is Build America, Buy America, BABA. We do have to follow some of those requirements in seeking federal funds because we're seeking federal money for that, and we follow those restrictions that wouldn't necessarily apply to private development. But so my answer to your question is maybe. As far as building materials specifically to address
maybe.
that, we have some flexibility. We can't do that without a specific use permit process. So if council was inclined to support heavy industrial but not specific use, I think that flexibility is removed. So any flexibility and discretion that we would use, depending on the site, if it were evaluated, that SUP is probably important to keep.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion if
I'm
there's.
ready to hear it.
He's good.
I have a couple.
Yes,
Yes,
quick
Commissioner.
yes, sir.
Talk to me a little bit about the discussion on setbacks. I know that was a big topic at P&Z. Just brief me on that.
This kind of goes back a little bit to our discussion about noise ordinance. You could use many different elements to address potential noise issues. Anything that might disrupt someone's residential life in a property that's surrounding or within proximity. The setbacks would provide for essentially as a barrier for that noise element. Noise dissipates over distance. So if you can't necessarily put a wall up, you also have distance to provide that noise buffer. So this was an element that I think has come before many of the cities that have current regulations. They do apply setback requirements. In each one of the examples I presented that have clear and approved best regulations, each one of them had setback requirements. Now, some had more than others. Some had up to 200 feet. Some had even 300 feet. But when you get into higher minimum thresholds, that does impact maybe lot size. Would it be sensible to require a minimum of 1 acre, but a 500-foot setback? We're almost defeating the purpose of even allowing it, because that would be very difficult, a standard to meet. So there may be further evaluations, but applying that minimum gives council, Planning and Zoning Commission flexibility to use discretion when considering an SUP in particular.
Where does, go ahead,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, for sure.
Very simple question. Where does the energy stored go? Does it go onto the grid? Does it take from the grid? Does
I
it
will-
increase our electricity bills, or
I
does
will-
it make them go down?
I will use that question as an opportunity to invite Matt Winchester, representative from Encore. They are the energy transmission and distribution service provider within our area, pretty much exclusively within our area, and he can speak to how it fits into the larger picture.
So it strictly goes onto the grid. It helps support distribution systems throughout wherever it's needed. So its locale would generally be used for this area, right? We're not going to want to transmit it across wherever, but its general use would be here. So it'd be to support And it would be an ERCOT decision, right? It's not an Encore decision. Encore is kind of out of the game. All we would do is tie into it and then transmit it. We'll be the UPS. We're going to deliver the system, the power, but we don't own the power. We don't buy the power. We just transmit it. Does that make sense?
We're gonna have to buy the power?
No. It's whoever is consuming power at that time, right? So if you are a consumer at that time, when they dump power on and it's needed, it goes to wherever it's needed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You might buy it.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you might.
They're just gonna transmit it.
Yeah.
So you can't buy it.
My
Brett-
experience is whenever you might buy it means you're going to buy it. That's my life.
I
Am
can't
true or
argue
false?
that.
Yeah, okay.
Can't
So
argue that,
that's the
but
answer I was looking for.
Which, Brad, to my point was, once you become dependent on those
Right.
adjacent power sources, and ERCOT and Encore, God bless them, are distributing them to DFW, and it looks like we're covered. And then, if, again, worst case scenario, you end up with some unintended equipment in there, and you decide, let's say it is a proxy that decides, okay, I can hack these easier, and that'd be a nationwide deal. Then all of a sudden, might be those that go down. It might not be any intent on those that actually build it. They may not know, but again, if you have something that's not in the specification, we now have that. There's been a mad rush to build these everywhere. That's why folks that are approving them don't necessarily know, and those that are building them, the origin of every single piece, or what they might or might not. And so that is the reason. So if you became dependent on it, would there be an
You
unintended
being
consequence?
Nacogdoches.
Correct. Me, and with y'all looking at me saying, why didn't you say something? So I'm
Right.
saying something.
Okay.
Okay, I was also asked, where do we decide and how do we decide to build substations? And that is purely it's a two-step process. One is, can we get some property in the location where load growth is? So that's, as a general rule, we don't go out to 20 years planning for where a substation will go. But we do look 10 years in where the load growth is in an area. And then can we buy property, and do we have transmission power lines that are close to that will help support that? That's kind of where we fall as far as just putting in our substations. Those substations are built to distribute power. We're taking it from the grid, the transmission lines that are built throughout the system, and we're transferring that from a high voltage to a kind of a medium voltage that distributes that to your house and steps that down one more time to a voltage you can use at your house.
So can we reasonably expect if there are 6 substations around Nacogdoches, there will be 6 battery storage units eventually?
Battery storage units generally want to go near a substation for the infrastructure that has to be built to get it from there to the substation. So the closer they are, the cheaper it is on them.
Okay, so the answer is yes, pretty much, yeah. Okay.
One other question, Matt. So this is the storage, and this is where they would attach to. Do y'all typically see more clusters of, say, then following that, the data centers? Okay, so, if this comes, does that mean that will try to follow the power, which then you're both, but it just in terms of chicken and egg, let's think through this.
As a general rule, I'm going to say yes.
I was not looking for affirmation because God knows I don't get it. But so I would expect, okay, this is a precursor to other things potentially trying to come, which is a whole other discussion.
I appreciate
Any
your
other
honesty.
questions?
It's really refreshing.
Any other questions?
Sorry,
Okay, go ahead.
I got a few. Mike, this next one's for you.
Thank you.
Or maybe the city attorney. So
All right, yeah, get Jerry involved.
process-wise, so assuming we adopt this ordinance, this can't happen, right? We're talking within 1,000 feet of a residential zoning district, period. It's not, we can't even do an SUP.
Not, well, so, again, no, not as we're applying it. They could go through the process and we could evaluate it as that. There could be a variance requested for that purpose. But all the criteria, and I don't want to presume, again, ahead of an application being submitted and what those conditions might look like. Many things point to it being surrounded by residential. It would not, it'd be very difficult to say that it supports the comprehensive plan, so there'd be a challenge in determining how that would fit within council's views and priorities of applying the comprehensive plan elements. So you don't want to say no completely to a lot of things, but there is a process and a method to seeking a change that would accommodate this development.
And I would just reiterate kind of what Mike's saying. There would have then be a process in place by which could be followed. Whether, and again, we're looking at this not just as one property.
Right.
This is an ordinance that would apply to the entire city, and that should be the main concern here. It's not a specific application, even though we don't have an application at this point right now.
So, and as we're discussing any changes that would come in the future, it has to go through the entire public hearing process.
Correct. Well, it'll come before that to Mike's office, and there'll be a process there before it even gets to the public hearing process.
But I mean for an ordinance change standpoint.
Correct.
Yes, we would, let's say there was another amendment that we wanted to add a couple of other elements as minimums under this supplementary regulation. We had talked about maybe some other environmental hazards that we wanted to address. We'd go through, just like we had before with other zoning ordinance changes, another public hearing, go through those comments with the Planning and Zoning Commission and Council. But without that, if there were a zone change request or an SUP request, Planning and Zoning Council and an additional neighborhood meeting to receive feedback from surrounding property owners. So that's standard. That would be followed regardless. And the feedback that would be expected and public comment periods that would be entitled, those are all part of it, regardless of what direction we go with this.
Last question, as long as I get the answer I want here. From the fire department perspective, are we good with this ordinance as it's written? That's all I needed to know.
Any other questions? Kathleen, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I'd like to move that we approve the ordinance of the city of Nacogdoches related to energy storage systems as outlined in item 6A.
And I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is also a public hearing. Discuss and consider action on zoning case ZON 2025-14 regarding a zone change from B2 general business to R2 single family on one parcel of land approximately 1.79 acres plus or minus in size, more particularly described by Nacogdoches Central Appraisal District, parcel 33096, and generally located in the southeast corner of Old Tyler Road and Jeffrey Street, Nacogdoches, Texas. Mr. Paulette.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Juan Paulette, City Planner. Good news, this item shouldn't take as long to decide.
Oh, that's you.
I just jinxed myself. So this property fronts Old Tyler Road and Jeffrey Street, is approximately 1.79 acres and is undeveloped. The surrounding properties to the south and are primarily undeveloped, with single-family residential development to the west and northeast. The applicant plans to construct a single-family home on the property. The subject property is surrounded by a mix of commercial and residential zoning districts. The adjacent zoning along Old Tyler Road is Zone B2 General Business, with residentially zoned properties to the east and west. The future land use plan designates the subject property as single-family residential. Staff believes that the future land use designation of the property is consistent with the proposed zoning and aligns the existing residential development pattern in the area. This is a picture of the subject property from Old Tyler Road. And this is a picture of the residential property directly across the street. This slide shows the land uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 13 public meeting notices to those property owners and 4 notice postcards to property owners within 200 and 500 feet. Staff has not received any notices on this request. There was no neighborhood meeting associated with this item, as we typically only hold neighborhood meetings for rezones to a more intense use. Staff believes that this request meets the conditions for approval as stated in the staff report. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item on January 12th and recommended approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Any comment from the audience? There being none, I'll close the public hearing and open for discussion, if any. Or a motion.
I just want to ask a question. Is there some reason it's going to R2 instead of R1?
It's to match the the additional zoning, which is R2.
So in other words, going down one is,
It'll just match the adjacent zoning, which is R2.
what can you build on an R2?
Just one single-family residential home, the minimum lot size being 60 feet by 100 feet versus 75 by 110 on R1, slightly larger lot.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if you want me to. All right, so I would make a motion that we approve zoning case ZON 2025-14 regarding a zone change from B2 general business to R2 single family.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do C. It's a public hearing, and then we're going to go to E to get Connie and Mr. and Ms. Haley out of here. We can handle D in-house with. This is a public hearing to discuss and consider action on specific use permit case number SUP 2025-07 regarding a specific use permit request for liquor by the drink in a B2 general business district on one parcel of land approximately 0.38 acres plus or minus in size, more particularly described by Nacogdoches Central Appraisal District parcel 23487 and located at 1426 Douglas Road, Nacogdoches, Texas. Mr. Paulette.
Mayor, City Council, Juan Paulette, City Planner. So the subject property is located on the north side of Douglas Road, which is a commercial corridor with a mix of commercial and residential uses. The property contains an existing single-family residence fronting Douglas Road and a newly constructed restaurant located towards the rear of the site. The restaurant recently opened at this location in August of last year from when relocating to the adjacent property to the east. This request is for SUP for liquor by the drink for an existing restaurant, which is required due to the proximity of residential zoning. The subject property is zoned B2 general business, which allows restaurants by right. The properties along Douglas Road are primarily zoned B2 with residential zoning located immediately to the north of the subject property. Because the subject property is within 300 feet of a residentially zoned property, the ordinance states that a specific use permit is required for liquor by the drink service. The future land use plan designates the subject property as single-family residential. Although the future land use designation does not align with the current zoning, the property is zoned B2 general business and is located along an established commercial corridor. This is a picture of the subject property with the residential house in front and the newly constructed restaurant towards the rear of the property. This slide shows the land uses within a 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 13 notices to those property owners within 200 feet and 15 notice postcards to those within 200 and 500 feet. No responses were received from this request, and a neighborhood meeting was held at City Council chambers, and no residents attended the meeting. Staff believes that this request meets the conditions as stated in the staff report, and the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item on January 12th and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, This is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Any comments from the audience? There being none, we'll close the public hearing and go to discussion or a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the specific use permit with the conditions noted in item 6C.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. For the record, we are going to skip D and go to item E. And we'll come back to D after we consider the approval of an encroachment agreement between the City of Nacogdoches and Clayton and Connie Haley related to property located at 217 North Mountain Street.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jerry Baker, City Attorney. I have before you a proposed encroachment agreement between the City of Nacogdoches and property owners Connie and Clayton Haley related to their property located at 217 North Mountain Street here in Nacogdoches. The city became aware of an encroachment along Edwards Street where the subject property is located. And in doing so, that began an investigation and a need to determine the extent of that encroachment prompted the city to engage the services of a surveyor. George Middlebrook was retained to perform this survey. You have a copy of it attached to the agreement in front of you as Exhibit A. You'll see the description of that survey that he returned to the city, as well as what I'm showing a picture in front of you right now. And I've, for the benefit of this meeting and the audience, I've highlighted the area that we're talking about as far as the encroachment area. And I don't know if you can see in that highlighted area, but the encroachment area, as the survey came back, it was determined that encroachment area included portions of the property that were already in place before the current owners, the Haleys, had acquired the property. And that included portions of the driveway, sidewalk, walkways, parking spaces, and parts of their landscaping, including some brick walls that extended out, and you can see those indicated there on the survey. And so in the need to address that issue, I approached the Haleys regarding the possibility of engaging the city in this encroachment agreement, and drafted one up and sent that over for them to review. And we've negotiated that back and forth, but you'll see that proposed agreement in front of you. As is stated in there, it first acknowledges the encroachment exists. Okay, that's key number one. Okay, and that secondly, how do we engage that and approach that and address that issue? And so it sets forth those terms between the city and the property owners to include, maintenance and upkeep of the encroachment, how much, if any, it can be extended beyond its current area, the annual fee that will be paid to the city as part of the consideration for the agreement, any protections for the city to include any indemnity for any potential misuse or negligence that may result from the use of this encroachment area. And those are all spelled out in the agreement before you. It also sets forth the term. It's a one-year term that will continually be updated every year until either one of the parties determine it's no longer necessary. And I think that sets forth the main terms of the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have concerning this proposed agreement before you.
Any questions? Ms. Haley and Mr. Haley have waited a considerable long time to receive this. Do you want a copy of this when we get through, Connie? Tonight? Any questions or motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve the encroachment agreement between the City of Nacogdoches and Clayton and Connie Haley related to the property located at 217 North Mountain Street.
And I'll second the motion.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll go back up to 6D. Consider approval of an ordinance of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, amending Chapter 2, Administration by adding Article 5 Code of Ethics to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, providing a severability clause, providing a continuation clause, and providing a repeal clause, and providing an effective date. Mr. Baker.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jerry Baker, City Attorney. What we have before you is a proposed amendment to our Code of Ordinances, adding a new article to Chapter 2, titled Code of Ethics, specifically related to lobbying. You will recall at our council retreat that this proposed ordinance was brought before the council and presented to you. And we answered questions at that point after the presentation and took some input. And based on that input and those questions, this ordinance is being brought for you tonight for approval. So the purpose of the ordinance is to reinforce the guardrails that have been established under state law, specifically under the Texas Government Code and the Texas Local Government Code concerning conflicts of interest. There's a focus here on lobbyists who are engaged in lobbying activity as those terms are defined in the ordinance that occur within the city, whether that may involve this body or our boards and commissions or any members of the staff. So definitions. You may recall seeing these at the retreat, but I want to go back over and answer any questions you may have since then. But just to point out that as defined in the proposed ordinance, a lobbyist is defined as any person who engages in lobbying activity for compensation. And again, I would point out that underlined part because that's a key distinction, as we'll get to in just a second. Lobbying is defined as any oral or written communication to a city official in an effort to influence or persuade a city official on any municipal question. One thing I would also point out in that definition is that the exceptions stated under that definition are more extensive than the definition itself. You'll see those listed on page 2 of your ordinance that you may have in front of you. So you'll see subsections A through M that are listed there, and those are all the exceptions to that definition. And as specified in section 2-214, the intention of this ordinance is not to interfere with a citizen's right to petition his or her government. So one of the changes that was made since the retreat was the addition of a definition for compensation. What do we mean by that? Is defined, or the definition that's proposed here, is the payment of money, equity, or other forms of incentive, including reimbursement for expenses in exchange for lobbying activity. And so, as it's stated in the definition as being proposed, the intention is not to require anyone who may be gainfully employed or contracted with somebody to have to register as a lobbyist. Rather, if they are engaged in that employment or contracted to do so for the purpose of engaging in lobbying activities. So a clear distinction is trying to be made to ensure that just because somebody is employed somewhere, that doesn't mean they have to necessarily trigger the registration requirement as a lobbyist. So if that makes sense.
So let me give you an example. In one city, there was a handful of civil engineers or land planners and it was always known. So let's say 500 home neighborhood and rezoning and concept plan. And typically how they would operate was, okay, they would, before it would even come to council, they would have already tried to meet with all of the council members separately. And that was the business they were in. And so obviously, and then, y'all have to operate already under the premise that if there's a conflict of interest, you disclose it. Staff has to operate the same way, that we have to disclose it. However, sometimes you end up with the nice guy around town that gets in that business of, and then yes, it was an exchange for either fee or other activity, which is the difference would be If someone's a civil engineer and they're proposing something and they're bringing it to planning commission, and then they bring it to council, and they're not going out trying to pull the council, basically, which is what some of them will do, then they don't have to register. That's the normal course of their job. It's when you morph into another animal, you just have, this is just asking that you identify what you are.
Correct. And at the end of the day, anything that we're proposing here is not a restriction on anyone from approaching this body. Rather, that if they are lobbyists, that they meet that definition, that there's an additional requirement, is that they have to then register. Make those requirements as part of that registration to disclose who they are, who they're working for, what they were proposing. And that's the point. So one of the first requirements there on section 2-211 is to extend the conflict of interest disclosure requirements that are set forth under the government code and local government code. As you know, as members of a governing body, you are required to disclose any conflicts of interest you may have related to anything that maybe come before you, whether it's a contract or something of that nature. You're required to, I know several of you have come to me before and filled out that little form and had that done prior to the action being taken, and recuse yourself so that there would be no perception of conflict of interest. What we're asking anyone to do, if they want to do business with the city, is, and they're aware of a conflict of interest, to disclose that, to make that known. And that's all that we're saying is, if you want to do business with the city and you're aware of a conflict of interest, just make us aware of that. And then secondly, the lobbyist registration. So under 2-212, require any lobbyists engaged in lobbying activity within the city to register with the city. So they're required to identify who they are. They're required to identify the person or entity for whom they are engaged in this lobbying activity, the particular municipal question as that's defined in the ordinance on which he, she, or it intends to lobby, and any positions held currently or previously with the city, so that we are aware of any potential, again, conflicts that could result because of maybe their knowledge of the city and or involvement with persons involved with the city.
Now, we haven't proposed a blackout period, but in some cities, and I have seen this, I have seen both elected officials and staff go from I'm an elected official or I'm senior staff to then they're showing up assisting development groups entitling properties at the podium. Now, some do a blackout period. So I've seen 1 year. I think I've seen 2 years. I don't know if you saw. You probably saw.
I've seen. Yeah, it varies by the city. So some cities require 2 year.
And this just goes back to your old civics and the Iron Triangle and Dwight Eisenhower and things like that. About and the feds have federal government has, and I think the state also does. There's usually a certain blackout period to change hats. Typically it's so you can't work on something or either vote on something or work on something at staff level and then turn around and be beneficiary of it on the other side because it's too close in time. But we don't have that in here. But those are right. That's a whole other discussion.
All we're requiring is that it be disclosed to the city at the time of the registration. And as you may recall at the retreat, one of the questions that I raised was what amount will we require for any kind of registration fee? This is the $150 was the amount that was proposed, and that's solely to cover the administration of this registration process. So that's all I have. Any questions that the council may have concerning the proposed ordinance?
If somebody comes up to me in Kroger's, and they want to open a business here,
Mm-hmm.
do I say you need to register as a lobbyist?
Not necessarily. I would say that we do have this requirement, so I would recommend that you look at this definition. If you think you meet this definition, it may be a good idea to go ahead and register. But
will it have a chilling effect on communication with the citizens of this town? Are they, I mean, a person comes up to me and asks about that. It just seems like they're like, seriously, you want me to go to City Hall and pay $150 to give all my personal information so I can talk to you at Kroger's?
So
about
if
this?
they're trying to get
No.
just
Well,
information,
I'm just asking.
if they're trying to just get information, look at the first exception. Merely requesting information or inquiring about facts or status of a municipal question, matter, or procedure is not lobbying. So if they're just asking questions about a certain matter that may be coming before you, what we're concerned about is someone who is trying to influence your vote, to try to get you to vote either one way or the other, or not vote at all on something, because they are incentivized to do so.
So let's look at it this way. If someone comes and asks you that question, said, I want to start a business, where do I start? The answer would be, oh, great, we have economic development. Mary Frances is here. That's what they do. Okay. The flip side would be if, oh, I've got a piece of property. I'd love to get it rezoned. Can I rely on your vote? And then they hit you at Kroger. They hit you at Aldi. They hit you at Little Walmart. They hit you at Big Walmart. Sorry, that's where I would be playing. And I know it must be missing something. We must have another one. So, or one of the two, the other Kroger, Kathleen. And at that
There are a
point,
lot more places, but
yeah.
we don't
I'm just
have
thinking about all the places I could get groceries or bacon, or peanut butter or chocolate. So, but I think the thing, so y'all can't do a walking quorum, right? But effectively, without some kind of guardrail for them, they can de facto induce what ends up becoming one. So what this does is like, wait a minute, you're shopping an answer for all of us, kind of behind the scenes. We haven't even said grace over this. And it's one thing for them to go ahead and say, okay, I'm making my case about this. But if that's what they're doing, they need to identify themselves, because you're at that point engaging in lobbying activity. There's a reason why Congress has it. There's a reason why even the state has the same requirement.
Don't we already have this
No.
Yeah.
in our code of
No.
ethics and things?
No, not this specifically.
Is it happening a lot?
Let's just say this. Once it is going to start exploding, I mean, you've already seen some of the type of things that are starting to show interest here. Just wait. And that's where, okay, I know we talked about it in the workshop, but we're not trying to become a great big metropolitan area overnight, but we are going to have those that come from the great big metropolitan areas that are very sophisticated, that do this for a living, and they're going to come. So beware of those bearing gifts. And then some of these same ones are also going to start providing campaign contributions, especially if they're nationals and they want to get their way. And once you get into that game and they do it like they're playing, we might be thinking we're playing checkers here and they're playing chess. This is so we can be, and y'all specifically can be, and staff, prepared for when they show up to town in the great big Lincoln Town Car. Wait, they don't make those anymore. I wish they did. But that's it.
Other questions?
Lots.
Okay.
So has this happened in the past 2-4 years where somebody you think should have registered as a lobbyist?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so.
So can you
I-
give me an example of
can.
a?
I don't want to give you any specific one, but I'll
Well, you can de-identify, but I'd like,
I can give you an example that happened to me. You could either call it lobbying or a bribe. That a gentleman was in my store and he needed a Sub-Zero for his home. And he has a business in another state. And he said, you better give me a good deal because I'm intending on moving my manufacturing facility here.
but that's a bribing.
Okay.
That's a whole,
It's a lobby.
In the sense, though, they're trying to get him to
it's the same thing.
influence his
sure,
vote.
but that,
And I asked him to leave. I asked him to leave my store. It's what I did. So, yes, and Rick's right.
but wait, let me just make sure that, would that have fallen under that, and it's my understanding that wouldn't have fallen under this ordinance, because that's his business and he's normally going about it and, right? Is that, am I correct? I don't know.
That would have fallen under
Just ethics.
state law
Right.
and bribery and everything like
Right.
that.
There's some additional things that would
Okay.
fall under, but it could
Right, but not-
potentially fall under
As
this,
far
yes.
as I'm concerned, I put lobbying and bribery in the same
Well,
category.
let me put it this
Well,
way. What it
it's
does,
really
it
different.
gives y'all, so let's say something is maybe trying to come to town. And they want to entitle a piece of land and they want incentives. They may also simultaneously be providing campaign contributions, because I've seen them occur all very close together. And of course, so no, I provided this, but that wasn't my intention. I'm just a supporter. But the main thing is, the good thing about the registration piece, you then have a list of who might be coming and trying to shop you on, and it also doesn't mean you have to, it doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. They follow the ordinance. It doesn't mean you have to hear them out. But at least you know that they've identified themselves, that that's what they're doing, and that they likely will be going to other council members as well. And again, they'll typically go one by one, and do I have your support, or do you have any questions? And the danger is, the scary thing is when, and I've seen councils, before something even shows up at P&Z, you have had quote unquote unregistered lobbyists effectively poll the entire council to see if P&Z doesn't pass it, can I count on you? And those are the type of, you will get those. I mean, I'd be doing y'all a disservice of saying that once we pop with growth, with the demand that's coming, that won't happen.
Okay, I would like an example of something that is addressed in, by this ordinance that has happened to us in the past couple. Because really, you're saying that somebody who owns a business, they can come to all of us, they can do that already, and this ordinance doesn't impact that. Because, because they're not being paid to do something on behalf of another person. They're just coming themselves. Is that correct?
No, that's not. I'll let Jerry speak to that.
Yeah, I'd
Are you
like
saying
to-
they're not being compensated?
Well, it's part of their normal job, or it's part of,
So that wouldn't fall under this ordinance then?
right, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so we've
So
had lots of
what
examples
we're
of
making a
that.
distinction here is that if you're engaged in normal business, or I don't know, you make widgets or whatever, you're a widget manufacturer, whatever it may be, and you're getting paid to do that, but you want to petition your local city council for a particular item.
Yeah.
There's nothing that require you to register because of that. However,
Correct.
if you're going to get a bonus or a certain percentage of a future endeavor because of what you're doing, engaging in that, that's what we're saying that you're going to have to require.
Or an equity
require you-
share. But let's
require you to buy.
say
That's
yeah.
why the compensation is defined as it is, because it'd be cash, it could be equity, it could be any type of incentive that you
A
receive
cup of coffee.
because you're engaging in that, including expenses. So
Including
if you're
cup of
going,
coffee.
if you're going from Tyler to here and you're receiving, your overnight stay at Fredonia being reimbursed to you because of your lobbying activity that you're engaging in here because you're trying to pull a business over here, that could potentially require you to meet that requirement to register as a lobbyist. Definitely.
One concern I have is that the tendency is going to be, I don't really know all the rules, just go away, kind of. I mean, it's going to have a chilling effect on, I think, people just talking to you, or like I'll be like, wait, hold on, let me look here. No, I don't think you're lobbying.
The intention
was
is
the nice man from Godtel, was he lobbying tonight?
No,
Were the
he
other
can't.
people
No,
lobbying?
if you're coming to P&Z, and then the next step they're going to council and they're at the podium, that's not lobbying. It's when you don't have posted public meetings, you're being compensated. That's the business you're in. Getting entitlements for others, or maybe because you get an equity share in it, and you're basically going through polling council, or trying to poll the P&Z, or trying to sway staff. It's still different than a preliminary, a pre-development meeting. That's normal. That doesn't necessarily constitute any lobbying, because they're coming in, they're presenting what they're going to then subsequently file or petition P&Z or petition council on. What this does is add some additional transparency to it. If anything, it probably, if they're completely above board They'll have no problem with it. They're probably having to do it other places. But we're not the only place that has even proposed this. Because the entitlement thing, that is where, and then that's kind of the dirty little zoning secret, is that, let's face it, it's a created market. There's only so many land use categories that fall into certain acreage. So just this shift in zoning classification, let's say from residential to a commercial, that parcel, the second that happens, what that can be sold for, the value changed. The dirt's the same, utilities to it are the same, but just that act alone creates a different market because there's only so many parcels that fit those categories. In a perfect world, they come to staff, pre-development meeting, or, okay, I'm trying to understand your process, and that we would call that a pre-development meeting. Okay, they go to P&Z in a public forum, posted meeting, and then they go to council. All we're saying is, if you're doing all this other stuff, like this is Paris or Berlin in the Cold War, and your coffee here, and, you know, fedora over there, and that kind of stuff, trying to build it kind of behind the scenes.
Is this protecting us or the city or?
All of the above.
So let me give you an example. This is just off the cuff right here. So if a big lobbying firm or lobbyist that represents D.R. Horton or something comes here, they're going to be required to register in order to approach you to potentially lobby you to agree to a particular plan that they may have or to bring to the city. However, if that same person, all they did was show up here at city council meeting and petition the council to approve something, they aren't required to register. Correct. Because that specific exception under there, it does not constitute lobbying. What we're talking about is the activity outside this room when they're approaching you to try to get you to vote a certain way or not vote a certain way in order to incentivize themselves.
So that's half the city. I mean, just to talking to.
But
I'm sorry, I
what's their
interrupted you. I didn't
intent?
mean to.
No, but the intent, it's, let's just say this. And let me just use the women's clubs or something. I doubt that every time you have an interaction or go to the old UB for an event, you're getting a whole bunch of questions. But I doubt anybody attending that is trying to entitle a piece of dirt, or put a battery plant in, or a vape shop. Just as an example. So no one there they could ask you about, you know, why is it so cold in this building, or why don't we serve more cheese or something, but none of that would be lobbying.
Well, I'll ignore the implication that the women are just asking about cheese.
Every time I have cheese every time I get invited over.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. However, well, I'll wait a second to ask my other questions, but.
I've got a question.
Sure.
We're having to dance around specific examples, right? The question has been made, give me specific examples. Have we discussed specific examples outside of this room
Have I discussed it?
with the council?
Not in this context, no.
Okay, that's all I had. Because we have discussed specific examples, and we all know that we have.
I won't go into that specifics, no.
I don't know.
Not here.
That we have.
We have. We've discussed in various contexts where things would apply in this ordinance, but none of us are going to talk about it in open session. And that's.
So.
I have an example.
Go ahead.
When we were picking a city manager, there were 3 candidates. People came to me and said, I will never speak to you again if you don't select such and such. Were they lobbying me? Because that was
Were they
I
getting
was
paid
like,
to do
well,
that?
it depends. I kind of don't want you
paid?
to speak to me again.
Were they receiving any kind of incentive to do that?
Well, yeah, they were receiving a city manager they wanted.
No,
Do what they-
compensation.
Compensation. Were they compensated?
Who
So-
knows?
Which, by the way, if
That's
they
really
were,
part of the
Well,
question.
again, the burden is on them to do that. If they are not registering and they're not complying with the ordinance and they are found to be in violation, then they would be subject to the penalties that are set forth in the ordinance.
But they may not even know they violated an ordinance, correct?
Well, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. It's true. I can't say that I don't know that the speed limit is 55 miles an hour and I'm driving 70. I'm still subject to that law. I mean,
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Does Lufkin have this ordinance?
that I don't know.
Does Tyler? Does Marshall? Does Longview?
Does it matter?
Jeff? Yeah.
but okay,
Matters
so
to
let
me.
me just say this.
We're not
We're-
either one
we're-
of those cities, any of them.
We're now affiliated. Okay, now obviously Tyler's much bigger. I suspect over the years they've had all kinds of nationals in there. You know, they're, what are they, 90,000 people? I think Longview's at what, 80, 70? So we've been, no old references here since I'm 55, but we've been basically flatlined for quite a while. We haven't had growth. If anything, we've shrunk. All of a sudden, there's a reason why you're getting certain things that have come here. Yes, certain things went away, like theaters. It's unfortunate that times have changed on things like Blockbuster, but we're getting other things, and we're getting many of them with no incentives. However, and let's just take some of the other, I mean, we've had some pre-development meetings to address some of the housing stock or college housing stock issues. They haven't even asked about incentives because they're not looking for them. We've had more than one now, and that'll be a great addition to the tax base and address the growth. But once those students start popping on the metrics of site selectors, which they will, 1,000, 2,000, proportionate to having nothing or basically shrinking. They know we're now affiliated with UT. The campus plan is complete. There's 2,000 more students than there were 2 years ago. Is that about pretty close to the same number, almost 1,800? And we fully anticipate it because there have been various entities kind of fishing around, looking at things. And we do expect, if they are nationals, and there's some nationals that are great. Again, we got some national stuff that they didn't lobby. They pulled a building permit, as it should be. But you're also getting other inquiries, and I can tell you, I don't say this is something I wish on anybody, having been the manager at a place when it was the fastest growing city, over 50,000 in the state and the country during COVID, you're going to have so much lobbying potentially. And anytime you hit peak growth or our peak, that I would think that it actually might make your jobs a little easier because you at least know who you're dealing with. This may not be just a guy around town or gal around town, they may even use someone who's already here, who's kind of in the land planning or engineering business, and all of a sudden they're asking you questions because they've hired them because they know the town. And so, the first question becomes, well, are you asking me about this because of, and if you're going to be doing this, I hope you know there's an ordinance. That's all this is. But if you're not doing that, if you're just going to show up and you're only just trying to talk to me and we're not going any further with it, then I think they'd be fine. But if they're trying to lobby you in the traditional sense, meaning I'm getting some kind of compensation for having this conversation and trying to sway your vote.
Well, let me answer my own question here for you. So, no, Lufkin doesn't have it, Marshall doesn't have it, Tyler doesn't have it, Longview, Jefferson isn't a home rule, but most of these cities don't have a lobbying ordinance.
What difference does it make? We're not either one, any of
So
those
let me
cities.
continue, please. So I had to me, what I was thinking about was who would be hired? Because basically you're talking about somebody who would be hired to talk to somebody, anybody really, correct? Because they have to be hired by somebody to talk to us. That's the essence of this. Is
But
that
they would,
correct?
I mean, they
To
could be
talk to anyone.
employed or contracted, and,
Right.
and part of that.
They have to be paid.
They are being compensated
Right, paid.
to engage in this activity in
So-
order to meet that requirement.
Right, okay. So the kinds of people who might be being paid to be talking to us, what about an attorney who is paid to come and talk to you about, possible litigation, possible, possible land use issues before it's ever in writing? I think that's covered under this because it's somebody who is paid and they're coming to talk to a city official. Do they need to register as a lobbyist?
To ask me a legal question?
Yeah, to come and talk to you about something that is somebody else's issue.
Well, I
It
don't get a
relates
vote.
to the municipal, well, all the city staff, they don't have a vote, but they're all included in this.
But if they ask a question, say in a pre-development meeting, and you
No, I'm just talking about we don't even know what the question is. The attorney's calling you up, he's being paid by his client, and says, I need to come and talk to you because my client has a municipal issue. And I'd like to come and talk to you. Does he have to register as a lobbyist? He's being paid by his client to come and talk to a city official.
In order to, well,
Who
what's the
knows?
definition of lobbying, as we're defining it here,
Yes,
is in order to
right?
influence, persuade a city official to favor, oppose, recommend, or not recommend, or vote for or against, or take or refrain from taking any action.
Right, any of those. They could be calling you for any of those.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in that scenario, possibly, but I would.
But you
not-
don't
not-
even know yet, so.
I don't know. I don't know what the questions that are being asked.
So
at
do
this
you
point.
have to ask first in order to answer that before you're being lobbied? So they come up and say, look, I'm really worried about, I really think the city needs an ordinance about something that related to my client. Now, do they have to register as a lobbyist?
I wouldn't think so.
Well,
I think, again, it goes back.
I read all the,
It goes back to the compensation piece. To me, it goes back to the compensation piece and,
they're being paid to talk to you. They're
well,
being
yes,
paid by the
yes,
hour.
but let me take it a step further.
Okay.
The but for, meaning, is the compensation, it's not just someone paying their, project manager on a construction project to come down to City Hall to clarify something. I think it's a different animal if they're coming in saying, it'd be really great if y'all would think about an ordinance that would bracket things that might actually benefit my client and probably and maybe box out competition. Well, that would be a whole different thing, which means, okay, you're coming to try to influence policy for that individual's profit on something that would then come up to council. That might be a whole different animal than just asking hey, I'm looking at this part of the ordinance. What are we supposed to comply with here for my client who operates a business here?
No,
That's a
he's not asking a compliance question. He's saying, look, I'm concerned about this. I think this impacts my client. This, I'd like to have a discussion with you. Nothing in writing. What about people the contractor or the plumber, people who are paid by the hour?
Correct.
They come and they want to talk to the city.
Sure.
But they want to talk in general because is this kind of thing going to work? Are we going to be able to do this subdivision there?
So they're getting paid to be a plumber.
They're getting paid to talk to you too, specifically,
No,
because
no.
yes, they
are.
are.
They are receiving an incentive to influence a particular
Yeah,
position.
they're being paid.
That's the distinction.
No,
They're
they're
being compensated or receiving compensation in order to influence a certain position. Then they are engaging in lobbying.
Well, it could be. I mean, I want to do a subdivision
If they're just
over
asking
here.
a question though about a particular policy or whatever, that's specific
Okay,
exception.
so what if they say, my client wants to do a subdivision here. I want to talk to you about, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? They're not putting it in writing. They're just trying to get your feel for it. And I'm representing them. And, I'm getting paid to come and even ask this question because I'm a contractor. I know
as an
the
attorney,
details.
I would say we have code of ordinances, and I said if he or she would be probably sophisticated enough to go look at those before they engage me with that kind of question.
Yeah, but say they want to, well, not you, maybe they want to talk to Mike New, or they want to talk to planning, or they want to talk to Rick? I mean,
I would hope that an attorney would approach me before they would approach any of the staff on that, if that's what you're asking.
well, I'm not even talking about it. I switched from the attorney. To
Okay.
me, the attorney has to register as a lobbyist under this, but let's switch over to a plumber, a contractor. That's why I said a contractor.
Don't hire a plumber to be your attorney. That's what I take from this.
Well, I don't know. I'm beginning.
If that plumber or contractor is just coming to ask a question about a certain policy, no.
No, about
If they
the
are trying to
specific-
approach a member of the staff or member council or member of the boards to get them to engage in a certain activity or
Yeah,
a certain
pre-development.
action. you know,
Pre-development. Yeah,
take
I'm
some
really
action.
interested in this.
They want that board or that committee or that staff member to take certain action, and they're going to receive some type of incentive because of that.
No,
Yes,
they're being
they-
paid
they
to
would
come and
trigger that.
talk to you. They're
Now-
being paid by
now-
the hour.
Well, they're being paid by the hour. So the exception is under that compensation definition states if they're going to receive that compensation, whether or not they are engaged in that activity, that does not fall under the definition.
They're being paid for that activity. They're being paid to talk to you.
No,
They're
and-
being
and so-
paid by
so-
the hour.
So
That's what this says.
I mentioned this previously. It's usually, let's say, a civil engineer or a land planner. It's normal for them to come in and have a pre-development meeting and say, I'm looking at this site. I just want to know what the ordinance says. And then if what the process would be in terms of dates of if I request a rezoning. That's a normal course of action as a first step before you then either submit something to P&Z or just go ahead and submit a building permit based on a site plan. And I'm not saying it wouldn't come up to y'all eventually, but what they're not doing, they're not trying to influence a vote. They're not trying to gain an advantage for additional profit through an additional entitlement. What they're doing is that's simply it's really discovery at that point. They're just trying to clarify, okay, I've printed this, we've got that, this is what it's zoned. Would you prefer this all in do you need it in paper? It looks like you have online submittals. What's your timeline on your next 2 or 3 meetings? That in and of itself, if you're a civil engineer, that's normal. It's a different animal when that same engineer or attorney or land planner, let's say it's a surveyor, I've seen surveyors do it too, landscape architects, then starts trying to speak individually with council members.
This could just be one person. I mean, this proposed ordinance just talks about they could just talk to one person. They could talk to Case. They could be a plumber saying, we've got a big problem here. And Case, we need to change
they're
this,
addressing a problem,
particularly for my client, but it affects the whole neighborhood.
But you're talking about proposing a policy change which would eventually have a vote.
Sure, but
typically.
that's what it
So
says.
it's one thing to ask questions. It's another thing to
say we need to do it. I want you to be in favor. Case, I want you to be in favor.
Then they probably would need to register if that's the case, especially if there's a profit
If they're
motive.
getting incentivized by that activity,
Well,
definitely.
sure, they're going to get paid if they can do the thing, but I mean, they're just talking to.
Well, I would just point out that the definition says compensation does not include payment made to an employed or contracted individual if the payment would be made regardless of whether or not the individual engaged in the lobbying activity. So if they're a plumber and they're being compensated
but they're being
for
paid
their plumbing activity,
they're being
whatever
paid,
it may be.
paid by the hour, and that hour is coming to talk to you or coming to talk to Case. They're charging
So
for it.
they're getting paid by the hour,
Right.
irregardless of whether they come and talk to us.
No, they're coming paid for the activity of talking to you.
Okay, then they're going to fall under that definition.
So
If they're
they have
getting
to be a
compensated
lobbyist.
for the lobbying activity, yes.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Is it possible we could table this and come back to it after we have a little more, I'd like to talk to an outside party and see what they think about it.
I'm prepared to make a motion tonight.
Well, I'm just asking. It just seems awfully muddy
A
right
motion
now.
would have to be made to do that.
I'll make a motion
Well,
that
can,
we.
can I ask a couple more questions, though?
Sure.
Okay. Is it possible that somebody could be a lobbyist under this definition and not even know it? I mean, I'm thinking about the plumber, I'm thinking about the attorney who might approach me and say, you know, I really think we need an ordinance. I mean, my personal.
I don't think if you're, unless you're engaged in that specific activity and like working for a lobbying firm, you're probably going to identify yourself as a lobbyist.
But that is,
But you could engage in lobbying and still not call yourself a lobbyist, sure,
or even think of yourself as a lobbyist.
possibly.
And let me just ask you another question about compensation. It could be anything from a cup of coffee to lunch to paying their travel expenses to come up and look at something, or anything can
It
be.
could be reimbursement for expenses, sure.
Right,
Any kind of
anything.
incentive that they would receive to engage in that activity.
So, and the problem isn't so much, well, let me ask you this. Say somebody did this, didn't know they were doing it. Who pays the fine? The person who's listening, the person who is engaging in it, the person who is,
Well,
say
the person
somebody comes
engaging
up
in the
to,
activity.
say somebody comes up to me, I don't even realize that they're, I mean, do I have to ask them? I think Brad's example was a good one. You know, I don't know that they're being paid. I don't know if somebody paid them to talk to me, you know, but they're talking to me and I'm listening to them. And we later find out, oh, they were paid to come and talk to me. You know, they were paid $100 and told, you know, which I don't know. So who's?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to inform them that, you know, if you reach that point of the conversation and it begins to sound like lobbying, you know, at that point, it may be a good idea just to inform them that, hey, I just want to let you know, we have a lobbying ordinance that was just passed. Here are the requirements. You may just want to look at that. That's all I'm going to tell you.
So really anybody could be a lobbyist, and I really need to inform people who come and talk to
wouldn't say-
me. You really
I
need
would
to
say
read
it's
our
possible if they meet the
lobbying.
definition, yes.
And nobody else has this
Well-
lobbying ordinance that you know of?
Well,
and-
No.
Except for big cities. Big cities have them, but not the little smaller cities.
Well, cities with significant growth
Right,
have adopted them in other parts of the state. The only other thing, a caveat, and it could be, if y'all are less comfortable with staffs and staff doesn't have a vote, just in terms of them coming in inquiries, could be if they are engaging in activities trying to sway a vote with voting bodies, meaning P and Z or y'all, for compensation. If that, whereas anything with staff is discovery or informational, I don't know if there's another wall in there, but the reason Jerry would have included that as well, oftentimes they will try to also influence policy. Now, I didn't have any interaction with any of the folks that were here tonight, but effectively when we're proposing an ordinance and you have an industry show up and say, oh, we think it should be this. Now, if they were going to staff, and let's use this, I'm using this as a real example. If they were going to staff trying to influence how we wrote a proposed policy, then I would say, yes, then you need to register as a lobbyist. That's the reason to leave it in, and not just have it be based on whether you're a voting member or not. Because, again, you're trying to influence a policy, and then there's a profit motive. So I'm looking at both of those pieces. And again, do I think lobbyists? I know they have. I've dealt with the builders associations of both Houston and Austin. They represent national builders. You used one of them. All the ones that build nationally. And they will come in and, you know, staff might be at a first reading on an ordinance change, and they'll come in and say, oh, we heard the first reading. Before you get a second reading, did you ever think about this? And again, they're saying, oh, it's going to put us out. But they are paid lobbyists. That is what they do. They do it at the state legislature, and they go to do it at cities. And all we're saying is, if you're a lobbyist, if that's what you're doing for compensation, influencing policy, at federal, sometimes it's federal, state, and local. Many of them do it. Then identify yourself as such. Or otherwise, that means you can continue to operate with impunity at the local level, but you have to identify yourself at the state and federal level. Which
I understand your intent, but I don't read this. I mean, I think there's so many ways that
If you think, if you
that
have
are-
any
so many
suggestions
things are
on how we
included.
could bracket it
I haven't.
one way or the other?
Well, I would bracket, first of all, what is lobbying, people just talking to us, and we don't have any idea if they were taken out to lunch by somebody to come and talk to us. I mean, that's, to me, crazy. It's just has a chilling effect on people talking to us. And I think the other issues I have is that the compensation part doesn't look logical to me. To me, it's so hazy that there will be selective enforcement. That I can see somebody coming and talking to Randy, and Randy not even knowing that this person, by this definition, is a lobbyist. We don't know. Case doesn't know who is talking on somebody's behalf and who's been paid for it. And I think we're a small enough city that right now we really, really need to listen to people. The fact that other people, Lufkin doesn't have the ordinance, and I couldn't find a city under 100,000 who's a home rule city that has a lobbying ordinance. They have ethics. What Randy used as an example is an ethics violation. That's not a lobbying thing.
Kathleen, I don't need you to speak for me. Okay?
No, I'm just using that example. Well, never mind.
We'll use somebody else, but don't use me. I have no problem supporting this ordinance as it's written.
Well, let me clarify. We have ethics already both in Texas law, and we have ethics here in our own. It's written into our own charter. So we have those things that are covered by ethics, bribery, and all that. So
But
those are already in here.
but really, if you definitionally look at it, y'all have to self-identify if something is a potential conflict.
Sure,
Staff does
right.
as well.
Sure.
But they don't have to operate by the same set of rules.
Correct. So, as I mentioned earlier, like under the local government code and the government code both, the burden is generally on the governing body, to make those kind of disclosures, whether it's conflict of interest or whatever. Maybe it's a piece of property or a business relation or whatever it may be. What we're asking is that anyone who wants to do business then has that same burden to at least identify that and make that known to the city before they engage in that activity.
Well, I think I've already said it. I think almost anybody who's paid by the hour or by the job or who approaches the city, even originally, I think looks like it follows under this. I think this is just to have a chilling effect on people coming and talking to us. And I intend to listen to the people who talk to me. I intend not to be unethical. I intend to do my research if they and do the right thing and to do it with as much kindness as I
I
can.
think this ordinance is saying that you can't do that.
Yeah, it does. It says I can't listen to certain
Anybody
people.
have any more questions? Are you through?
I just think the tendency is going to be, well, better be safe than sorry, so you end up speaking less to people and being less open on just a local level. It changes the spirit of things where you become suspicious of everybody that comes to you, which I think we're treading on thin ice in terms of breaking the good spirits of this town, of the 300-year-old history, and I disagree.
Well, some of us have had our spirit and humanity broken many times over, including since I've been here. So let me just say this. I'm very straightforward. If it's a duck, call it a duck. If it's acting like a duck, call it a duck. Show your hand, or let's not play cards. And I'm just saying it because I've seen it. It's for y'all's protection. If you don't want to do it, fine. It also doesn't mean we'll engage those
I think it ought to be a super majority then, because I know how 3 are going to vote and 2 are going to vote.
Well, all I'm saying is if y'all don't want to do it,
How do you know that?
fine.
I don't know, I'm psychic,
But
I know.
But when, just in terms of having some guardrails so y'all don't get hit with a barrage, But I will say, once the growth pops, you will probably get hit with a barrage.
So then we'll address it.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance of the City of Nacogdoches amending Chapter 2, Administration by adding Article 5, Code of Ethics, to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, providing a severability clause, providing a continuation clause, and providing a repeal clause, and providing an effective date. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Wait, we have discussion.
Call the
We
question.
have discussion.
We've already questioned it to death, Kathleen. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion
I'm
carries
psychic.
3-2. Okay, that concludes our meeting. Thank you all for coming. God bless the great city of Nacogdoches, Texas.